Hello everyone, this is Blairbot. Welcome to part 5 of How to Draw Arceus. I'm very sorry to all who I offended by calling it Arceus in the last 4 parts. I promise it won't happen again. So in the last part we finished up our drawing of Arceus by doing some coloring. And now it's been 10 years, so I thought it would be pretty cool to try and draw him again using the new skills we've learned over that time. So I have a bit of a speed drawing already set up, so let's go ahead and play it. So the theme behind this drawing of Arceus is a tag team card. So a tag team card in the card game is when two Pokemon of sort of a similar theme are teaming up to attack or whatever the card is supposed to be doing. So for this I chose two normal type Pokemon from Sinnoh, the Almighty Arceus and the Almighty Bidoof. So this drawing will contain Arceus and Bidoof enjoying some time together, I guess you could say. So in the last 4 parts we went through a 4-step process where we did some shaping, outlining, detailing, and coloring. In this process it's going to be different. So for the actual drawing phase there will be 2 phases. The first, which you can see now, is the sketch phase. So in this phase we basically kind of plan out what we want everything to look like. We do a combination of shaping and detailing in this phase. And the second phase is going to be the inking phase. So you're going to take a fine tip Sharpie and basically go over the sketch with more defined lines. Using the Sharpie is good because when it comes to the coloring phase, it really shows the lines very clearly when we go to color. The other thing is that I'm not erasing my sketch marks. That's something I'm choosing to do personally, which you would not have to do if you didn't want. So the inking phase can be a bit stressful because ideally you only have one pass. You draw a line and it's there and you can't really undo it. It's not exactly true. We're going to see that you can make many changes to this, but this is definitely a technique I like when drawing Pokemon, because Pokemon drawings typically have very defined lines and they're cartoons in a way, so having that is a good way to show detail. And so after that we end up with this drawing here. So I drew Arceus and Bidoof separately because I want to be able to arrange them to fit on the card layout. So if this is what you want to do, if you want to get this far, do a hand-drawn version of Arceus, scan it in. You could be pretty happy with that. I mean, the thing about drawing is it's never really done. It's only really done when you stop working on it. So if you want to stop here, that's fine. But we're not going to stop here. We're going to keep going. So continuing on with the video, the first thing that I'm doing here is adjusting proportions. So you might be looking at the other drawing and seeing, well, some things don't look quite right. Bidoof's body is a little too long. The stomach shape isn't right. Things like that. So I'm using a tool called Paint Tool Psi, which is a great drawing tool. I would recommend that you purchase it legally because it's not that expensive at all, and it's a great tool to use. So I'm basically adjusting the proportions, stretching, deforming my previous drawing to be more in line with, well, to be more on model basically. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the idea is that at this point you can fiddle with it however much you want. So I basically take this time to edit my proportions, fix things to make it look a bit more appealing, and you can see in some spots when I didn't have the ink lines in my actual drawing, I just painted them in with the brush tool, and that's fine because we're going to use another technique right here after we show our little comparison, which is multiply. So when you go to a layer on paint tool side, you can identify it as a multiply style, and that lets you draw right underneath it without losing any of the detail on the top. So we're going to make our layer into a multiply layer, and that lets us color very easily underneath. So that's a great tool that I use when drawing hand-drawn art, when coloring hand-drawn art. So I know we're not drawing Bidoof here, that's not the point. The point is Arceus, so we're finally getting to him now. And I'm starting here by doing a color of Arceus first instead of doing proportion. The reason for this is that the Arceus drawing is a bit more complicated than Bidoof, especially in the area underneath the body where the hind legs are and where the fence thing is. So I want to color it first, so that way I can have the detail stand out more. And now I get into the proportions. So as I mentioned before, doing this proportion thing is a very fiddly process. In my opinion, now that I've started doing this, I feel like it's very necessary. Based on the way that I do my drawings. If you don't draw with an easel that is straight in front of you, that you're looking exactly at, you're not going to be drawing at the right visual angles. So things might come out a little bit different when you scan it in than to when you were drawing on paper. You might say, oh, well, that doesn't really look right, and stuff like that. So I feel like this is a very crucial step when it comes to coloring drawings like that. So I do things here where, oh, maybe the boots shouldn't actually be there, so I'm kind of editing them out, stretching my ink lines and copying and drawing to kind of mimic what it actually should look like. As you can see, I still have kept all of my pencil lines. I have not erased them at this point. The idea behind that is when it comes to finishing it up, I can decide which ones I want to get rid of and which ones I want to keep. And we're basically keeping our color layer and our outline layer separate so that we can have the fixed proportion drawing basically, and then just use the multiply tool to be able to color underneath without actually affecting the top layer. So this is a process that I fiddled with for a long time, and you could fiddle with this for forever basically. So yeah, it's getting to the point where, you know, I recommend that when you've done it for a while, you've been looking at the same thing for a long time, so maybe it would be a good idea to take a break, come back later, and then really think about your first impressions when you see it again. You say, oh, the head's not right, so then fix it right away. Another good trick is to take your image and flip it horizontal. That way it gives you another new perspective, especially when you're looking at eyes. You flip it horizontal and you say, that's not right. So you fix it when it's flipped, and then you can flip it back. It just comes down to when you're seeing things in a certain way from looking at it so long. So those are some tricks that I recommend. Now I'm doing a light shade here because we're getting to the end of the recorded session here. Actually, I think, yeah, it should be just about done. So in this part we scanned our thing. You can see the variation there between the pre-distorted and post-distorted Arceuses. So after all that, this is what we're left with. As I mentioned before, maybe this is what you're happy with. Maybe this is where you want to stop. It definitely, to me, is a pretty good drawing of Arceus. I like the way that they're kind of interacting with each other, and Arceus's size is more dominant here. Now, you might still look at it and be like, well, could do better, right? Yeah, I think so too. So here's a little tweak. In this, I fixed some more of the proportions, changed the pose a little bit. It's a little better. How about some actual shading? So I did some very brief shading on the first one, but I wanted to go a bit further in this. So this actually has some more depth to it. And there's actually shading blending going on, which is a new one. So that's pretty good. Maybe you're happy with that. Or you can keep going. So in this, I added a background, which is the main thing. Changed the pose. So at this point, I actually imported the tag team GX card frame into Psy and thought about where Bidoof should be positioned. And I put him up higher because when you have the move text, the text goes from about halfway down to the bottom. So you want to make sure that if you have something smaller, both of the faces are at the top. I also added an outline around them to kind of highlight them a bit more and did some more shading. So maybe you're happy with this. To me, I wasn't. The face on Arceus was still not right, so I made some more revisions, got rid of the line that goes right through it, and yeah. So maybe you're happy with this. Well, I wasn't, so I did another version. Basically for this, I did fix the face a little bit more. I went through and erased a lot of my sketch lines, so you can see that the sketch lines that are still there are mainly around shadowy areas and around darker areas, so that in lighter areas it's not really distracting. And I also went through, edited the background to look a bit better, and fixed some more of the lines around Bidoof. So, I mean, I guess what I'm really trying to say is that once you have a baseline, you can keep editing it and keep revising it. And I didn't record any of this because it was a lot of work on it for a bit and stop, and work on it and stop until you're happy with it. So I finally stopped at this. So looking at the new version side by side with the old version, I could say we've come a pretty long way, and definitely prefer the new one. But so this has been part 5, 10 years later. Hope you learned some new techniques. Thanks for watching.